Hello guys, welcome to NameTech channel. My name is Nehemiah and I'm very much happy to have you today. And we are going to discuss on the CSS complete course for beginners step by step. And before we get there guys, if it's your first time to learn to this channel, please take a second or two, click the subscribe button, that is support me and also the channel. I'll appreciate very much. First of all, let us understand what is CSS. So CSS is a styling language. It's used to style a HTML document, and CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheet. It describes how HTML elements are to be displayed on a screen, on a paper, or perhaps in other media, and it saves a lot of work because it can control the layout of multiple web pages, all at once. You can have several pages, but you have a single CSS which is going to affect all other pages, so it saves a lot of work. And then the external style sheet are stored in the CSS files. We are going to discuss it in a few. The CSS is used to define the style of your web page, including the design, the layout, and the variation in display for different devices and screen sizes. And so guys, let's first of all have our text editor guys. I'm using the Visual Studio Code. You can use any other text editor, but for me I'm using the Visual Studio Code. And so guys, once you open your text editor, or if it's Visual Studio Code, you'll have this kind of a window. And then what you're going to do next is to close this instruction here, the tutorials here. And then what you do next is now to select the folder. I'm going to place this project in the downloads here, and then let me select the downloads. And so guys, once you have your folder there, now the next thing now is to create the HTML HTML structures. Remember I told you that CSS is all about styling a HTML document. And so first of all, you need to have your HTML document, and that's why I'm going to create here a HTML file, and then I'm going to give it this name, index.html. And so guys, now this is my HTML file, and then I want us to create here some HTML snippets. So what I'm going to do, let me create a exclamation mark, then I click let me click enter, create an exclamation mark, then you click click enter, then it will give the snippet for the HTML structures. So now what I'm going to do now here, perhaps let me try to give it a heading, like let me say CSS tutorials. And then now guys, perhaps let me create also some some tags here that we'll be using to style to explain HTML. First of all, let's have a heading. I'm using h1, and then let me say let me give it, let me say heading 1, let me say heading 1. And then what I do guys, let me try to create also the paragraph here, P for paragraph, and then I'm going to say let me create lorem 60, perhaps to generate 60 words. And then guys, what I'm going to do now next is to before anything guys, let me open this browser, let me open this HTML in our browser. So I'm going to use the live server guys. If you don't have a live server, you can download it in this extension here. You're going to search for live server, then you'll install it. But remember, for me I already have it, so I'm going to right click, and then I'm going to open with live server. And so guys, you can see that here at the top I have the title, which is CSS tutorial, and then this is the heading 1, and then this is the lorem that we generated 60 words. And so guys, let me try to give you the CSS syntax. So basically this is how you style your HTML document. So the first thing that you begin with is the selector. So you are going to write you are going to have your selector. So in this case, selector can be anything like the body, the h1, the p tag for paragraph, the title, not the title, the HTML, and so forth. So the first thing is selector. Let me type well selector. selector. And then the next thing that you want to write here is the declaration. So in the declaration you usually have the property. So property, then you add a colon, and then you're going to have what? You are going to have your value. Then you close with this semicolon. And remember that you can have several declaration with CSS. Like you can have several these properties and value, several declaration. So like you can have something like this. Let me paste it here, several. So you can have several declarations. Remember, declaration is all about property and value. So this line is now the declaration. This is the selector. Selector can be anything like a head, body, h1, p tag, and all that. So now this is how you style your HTML. You begin with a selector. A selector is said that it can be anything like the paragraph, the h1, the p tag, the image tag, the anchor tag, and all that. And then I have the declaration. So in the declaration you have the property and the value. So guys, this was just to guide you. And then now we want to begin with the internal CSS. Remember I told you that we have 3 types of CSS. We have the inline CSS, we have the internal CSS, and the external CSS, external style sheet. So now what we are going to do now, let's begin with the internal CSS. So with the internal CSS, you write it between the elements, in the first tag of an element, HTML element. Like for example, let's begin with this h1. So we are going to write here the style. So like let me begin by saying text align. Remember, the goodness with the Visual Studio Code is just complete for you. So like when I say text align to be centered, you can arrange it to anywhere. But for example, let's try with the center. So let's save, and then let's see in our browser. And then I guess you can see here that this text is available at the center. And perhaps let me try to change the color, like to give it red. So I'm just going to add here another declaration here. And so guys, let me try to change the color. So I'm going to say color, and then I'm going to give it you remember you first of all create this column, then after column now you give it a color, like let me say red. Then you remember to close with what? You remember to close a declaration with a semicolon. So what I'm going to do now, let me save, and then let me go to my browser and see the changes. And so guys, you can see that the color is now changed. So I want us to discuss about the internal CSS. So now with the internal CSS, you put it at the head of your HTML. So like for example, let me try to remove this part of the internal CSS. So let me just clear it. Let me save first of all and make sure that it is, there's no styling here. And so guys, you can see that there's no styling here. So I want us to discuss the internal CSS. So now with the internal CSS, you give it at the head of your HTML element, and then you're going to use this codes. These are elements. Remember when we were discussing HTML, I said that the HTML usually have the start tag, the content, and the end tag. So the same applies with the CSS. Now this, when you use CSS in the HTML, it must be in the HTML format. Like you have the your HTML first tag, the closing tag, and then inside you're going to have your content. And then in our case, the content is gonna be the HTML styling. And so with the styling, guys, we are going to begin. For example, I say that we begin with the selector. So in our case, let's use this h1 as the selector. So I'm going to write h1 as the selector, and then I'm going to create the curly braces. These things are called the curly braces or curly brackets, whichever name you give it, just perfect. So now inside these curly brackets, I'm going to write what? I'm going to write now our declaration. First of all, I said that you can have several declarations. Like the first one, let's give it a text align. Then I'm going to give it to align where? At the center. So basically this is the property, and then this is the value, and then you close declaration with a semicolon. So first of all, let me save, and then let me go to my browser, and then I'll see the changes. And then guys, you can see that this text is aligned at the center. So now let's try again to change the color to be red. So I'm going to use another declaration here, and the declaration is gonna be what? So text color. So the text color, we just use color. We are going to discuss colors in detail, but just for the sake of making you understand the internal, inline, and all that, and the external CSS. So the color, perhaps let me give it red. Remember, you write a property, you write a colon, you write your value. So our value now is red. Then you close with what? You close with a semicolon. Let me save, and always remember to save. So once you save, now go to your browser, and then now guys, you can see the color is now changed to red. So I think you've now understood how to use the internal CSS. Let's now try the external CSS. Now let's now try the external CSS. So the external style sheet is what we'll be using several times. So with it, you're going to create a new file here. I said that the external CSS is stored in the CSS files. So you give it any name, like let me say styles. You can give it any name, but remember that the key thing, it must end with this file part, this extension .css, and then you do what? You click enter, or yeah. And so guys, you have what? First of all, let me minimize this part. This is a window. So now this is now our external style sheet, but now we need to link it to our HTML. Now to link your external style sheet to the HTML, you are going to use the link tag. Now if you're using the Visual Studio Code, you just write link, and then you click enter. So when you write link, then you remember this is a self-closing tag. They are remnants of XHTML. So first of all, you write link, and then you write rel, then equal sign, then you write style sheet inside the quotation mark, then you write your hyperreference, then equal sign, then here you're going to type what, and then here you're going to write what? You're going to write the exact name that you gave to the external style sheet. So like the external style sheet is styles.css. So what I do, let me save first of all, and then now let's begin. Now with the external style sheet, guys, you're going to have the same CSS or format. You begin with the selector. I say that you begin with the selector. You begin with the selector, and then open and close the curly braces, and then you're going to have what? Declaration. So inside your declaration, you have the property, property, and then a colon, and then you're going to give it a value, and then you close with a semicolon. So now this is how you style your HTML, your CSS, as I told you, your HTML document. And so guys, before we style it, let's first of all view our HTML before we style it. And guys, you can see it is very ugly. We haven't styled it yet. So I want us to begin styling, and perhaps let's change the color for the entire background, the background for the entire page. So I'm going to use what? Let me try this one this time. Let me say body, and the selector, and then I'm going to write what? I'm going to write perhaps let me add a background color. Then I'm going to give it, let me try something like a light blue. Then you remember to close with a semicolon. So let me save, and then to my browser, let me see the changes, and then guys, you can see that the color is now changed to light blue. So now let's try also for heading to align it at the center. So now with the heading, I'm going to say what is the heading. Now the tag for heading is h1, this h1, so I'm going to tag it h1. So let me say h1, then you open and close the curly braces, and then the first thing that I'm going to say, let me say text align. I'm going to align it where at the center, and then I say that you can have several declaration inside your HTML, your CSS. So I'm going to have also another declaration here, and I have let me say color. I'm going to give it something. Let me give it red once again, red, and then let me save, and then you can see that the color is now changed to red. And so guys, I want us to begin the CSS colors, and before anything, let me remove every style in here so that it may be blank. We begin with you afresh. So let me just clear this part. And guys, I wrote those lines of codes with the CSS just to give you a preview of how external Sightsheet looks like. But now I want us to begin with the CSS colors. First of all, let me be sure that everything is now blank on our page. Yeah, for sure it's blank. So now guys, I want us to begin with the color. Now what is CSS colors? And so guys, the CSS colors are specified using the predefined color names. You can use color names, or you can use the RGB, or you can use hexadecimal values. You can use HSL, you can use Rgba. Remember, Rgba is just an extension of RGB, but now with alpha for opacity. And then we have also the HSL. Actually this is hue saturation in the alpha or opacity. And so guys, I want us to begin with the color names. So like for color names, like let me choose a selector, like the selector, let it be the title, this h1. So this is gonna be the selector. So let me say h1, actually h1, and then let me open and close the curly braces, and then let me say what, let me say color, a color. Let me give it what, let me give it blue, actually blue. Yeah, let me say blue, and then let me save, and then you can see guys that the color is now changed to blue. Let me try to zoom in so that you can see very well. So guys, you can see that the color is blue. Let me now try to use a RGB value. And so guys, you can see that with the color names, just easy. So the other thing that I want us to discuss is the RGB. And so in CSS, a color can be specified as an RGB value using this formula. You have your, let me type in here for example. Let me say RGB, and then you open and close the curly braces, and then the first color is going to be red, R, that is red. Then you comma, then the second one is green, G, that is green, and then the last one is blue. So by default, this is how RGB colors looks like. So each parameter, like red, green, and value, each define the intensity of the color between 0 to 255. And so guys, now let's try this example here. Let me say color. Remember, the property remains color, and then now let me try this example. For example, if you give it, first of all, let's write RGB. First of all, you must identify that you are using the RGB. Then you write what? You write your these are parentheses, and then for example, if you give it the first color a higher value, like remember the first color is red, like if you give it 255, and then the rest you give it 0, like 0, then the other one 0, that is this green, this is green, and then this blue. For example, if you give it 0, so the color it will be red, because red has the highest value. So if we save, and then I go to the browser, and then guys, you can see that the heading is the heading is red. So for example, let's try another example. Like if you give it to the second value, a higher value, you remember that the second value is green. So like if I give it 2, 55, and then the first one I'm going to change it and give it 0. So the color will be green. Let me save, and then to my browser. Then guys, you can see that the color is what? The color is green. And then let's try the other example for blue. And so guys, let me try to give it also the other color to be the highest value. This is blue, so let me say 55. So the color it will be blue. Let me save and see, and then you can see guys that the color is blue. And then what is, so for example guys, if you give it all colors to 0, the color it will be black. Let me save, and then I see the changes. So guys, you can see that all colors are black. The color is black now, dark black. But if you give it all colors to 255, the color will be white. Remember, the background is white, so it will not match. So like for example, let me say 255 comma 255 comma then 255, and then let me say, so the color it will be white. Remember, the background is white and also the color is white, so it will not match. So you can see guys that the color is not visible. Or perhaps let me try to add a background color for the entire page. For background color we'll come to it later, but for making you understand, let me add this property. Let me select, use body as the selector, and then do it. Let me open and close the curly braces, and then let me say background color, and I give it something like let me choose any color. Let me save so that you may see our white color there. And so guys, you can see that this color is actually white. Yeah, I've just used this one to make you understand. So now basically this is how you write your RGB value. And so guys, the other thing that I want us to talk about is the Rgba. So remember, Rgba stands for red, green, blue, and the alpha. Alpha stands now for opacity. Like if I add it here, I add it here, opacity, and perhaps let me give it a color for red. Let me say red. Actually red, or let me do this. Let me say 255, then a comma, then let me say 0, and then now let me add the opacity. For example, opacity of 0.5. So like this is like 50% opacity. So the color will be ranging between the dark and the light. Let me save, and then you can see guys that this color is now ranging between the the opaque and also transparency. So for example, if you give it 1, it will be extremely opaque. Let me say 1.0. let me save. So the color will be absolutely opaque. But if I give it something like a 0, it will not be visible. Let me try to give it 0.0, and so our color will be transparent. You can see guys, it is not visible at all. So now this is now all about the RGB value. Now the other thing that I want us to talk about these colors is the CSS hexadecimal value, the HEX. So now with the HEX, the hexadecimal value we use, first of all, let's understand what is HEX. So hexadecimal color is specified using the hash. Let me just write it here. You begin with the hash, and then if it's red you write what RR for red, then G for green, and then blue, this BB for blue. So this now your hexadecimal value when defining a color, and then you close with a semicolon. So basically, and so guys, I want us to write here an example, but before I write it, guys, remember that the hexadecimal value ranges between 00 to FF. So it goes from 0, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Then it shifts to A, B, C, D, E, F. So F is the highest value now. So like if I write for example here, let me write, for example, I want to give it red, so I write, so when I write ff, this is like 255 in RGB color. So ff is now the highest value, and perhaps if I give the rest of the color to be 0, like 0 0 0 0, so our color will be what? Our color will be red. Let me save and see. Actually, to save is Control plus S to save. Now let me go to my browser, and then I guess you can see that our color is what? Our color is red. And so for example, let me try to give it something like let me say 0 0, or perhaps let me try to give it 9 9 6 6, and then for example DD, any color. I've just given it any color. Then let me save, and then guys, to your browser you are going to see this kind of color here. And so guys, I can see how hexadecimal value also work, but I remember with the hexadecimal value you can give it with the 3 digits. So with the 3 digits you can just write like if you write f, this is like 256, and then for example if you write 2 3 or 3, and then 0, or perhaps let me say 9, so it will give you also this color. So you can use 3 digits in hexadecimal value. Let me see, you can see guys, it's going to give you this kind of color. And so now the other thing that I want us to talk about is the HSL values, color values. So with the HSL, actually it stands for hue, saturation, and lightness, and hue is it's a degree on the on the color wheel, from ranges between 0 to 360, and remember that 0 is red, and then 120, that is green, then 240, that is blue, then 360 is like 0, so it goes to red, then again 120 green, then 240 blue. So and then now saturation is like the percentage value ranges between 0 to 100. Now 100% is like the full color, then 0 is like grayish. Now the lightness is also a percentage, like if you give it 0, this is like a black, and then 50%, this is neither black or neither dark or light, and then white is now the full color. Let's try this example, here. Let me say HSL. You must begin with the HSL itself, then you are going to you're going to open the brackets, and then you are going to give it a color, like if I give it 0 degree, remember you don't write a degree, you just write a 0, and then perhaps let me give it a full color, which is, let me give it 100%, and then a comma, and then let me give it the opacity or a lightness to be between 0 and what, 0 and between dark and light. Let me give it 50% at the midst, 50%. So this color will be something like what, actually let me give it 50, it should be 50%, 50%. So this color will be this kind of red. Let me save and see. Actually to my browser, and then I guess you can see that the color is red, and I say that 120 is green. 120 is actually green. Let me give it 120 and see. Let me say 120, and then so the color will be green, and then let me see. You can see that the color is green. Let me try to change now the lightness, and in the lightness, let me give it something like 100. 100. So guys, you can see the color will be totally light. Actually it will be white, it will not be visible. So let me try to give it something like 0%. So 0, it will be black, but I also like using 50%. And then now I think this is all about the HSL. And then and so guys, I think this is all about the colors. So the other thing that I want us to talk about here is now the background, the CSS backgrounds. So now the CSS background properties are used to add background effects for elements, like you can have your background color, and perhaps let me use the body. We tried it earlier, so let me say perhaps background color. Let me give it a color name using the color name, like let me say what, light blue. Let me use light blue. So our color will be what, light blue at the background. You can see the color is light blue. Let me try to zoom in again, to zoom out, so that it may be perfect. So you can see that the color is what, the color is, background color is light blue. And so guys, the other thing that I want us to talk about is the background image. So with the background image, guys, we begin with what, just write a background image, and then you're going to specify the image using the URL, uniform resource locator. Then you are going to write 2 quotation marks, then you are going to specify the image. So the image here is test1. Let me just write between these 2 quotation mark, I'm going to write what, let me write test. Let me choose this one. Let me save and see the changes in the browser. And then guys, you can see we have some images here, but now we want to use also another property for no repeat, so that we may not have several images here. So we are going to use another background property, which is called what. So I'm going to write what, I'm going to write the background repeat, no repeat, background repeat. Let me say no repeat. Let me say no repeat. So our image will not repeat. So let me save and see, and then I can see, guys, that you have only a single image here. And so guys, the other thing that I want us to begin with is the margin and padding, and also the border. So let's begin with the padding. And before anything, guys, let me remove everything here, so that it may not interfere with our with everything we are doing. And so now the thing that I'm going to target here is now let's this time try the what, let me try the p tag for paragraph. And so let me say p, then open and close the curly braces. And I guess you need to note that padding with the space between or inside the borders of an element, between and inside the borders of an element. Like for example, let me add this property. Let me say padding, and then for example, if I give it something like a 20 pixel, so it will create some space both side, top, bottom, right and left. That is 10 pixel. Let me save and see. For now, guys, you can't say anything, because unless we add we add a color, background color, so that you may see very well. But you can see that we have some space here between the edges here. But now let me add a background color for it, so that you may see what I'm talking about. Let me say let me add a background color. Let me give it something like let me give it this color, and then let me save, and then see the changes. And so guys, you can see that we have some space there. Let me try to give it 20 pixel. Let me give it 20 pixel. Let me change here to, or perhaps let me give it even 40 pixel. Let me save and see, and then and so guys, you can see that we have some space between the, I say that the padding is the space between or inside the borders of an element. You can see, guys, that both both top, bottom, left and right, it is what, it is 40 pixel. And then now the other thing that I want us to talk about is the margin. Margin now is the space outside the borders of an element. Like if I add margin, it will create some space between the edges of an outside the borders of an element, so between the edges. Like let me try to add this property here. Let me say margin, and perhaps let me give it something like let me give it 20 pixel, so it will create 20 pixel both sides. You can see guys that we have at least 40 pixel, inside, between the or outside the borders of this element. Or perhaps let me to give it something like 50 what, let me give it 50 pixel, so that it may have a big change here. And then I guess you can see that actually you have some space outside these borders, and that it is what, it is 50 pixel. But remember guys, you can specify each side. You can say 50 pixel that is top, and then the rest you give it 0, that is right, this is bottom, and then where at the left hand side, if you give it 0, then you close with a semicolon, actual semicolon, so it will only have the margin at the top. So let me save, and then you can see guys that we have what, only margin at the top side. And so let me try to add the margin here at the left hand side and the right hand side also again, or I can specify what, let me just give it 0, and then the left, let me give it something like a 50 pixel, and then let's see. And then I guess you can see that we only have the the space here at the right hand side. And then perhaps let's try the left hand side also. I'm going to use I'm going to add it where I'm going to add it I'm going to give it perhaps 50 pixel, and then let me save and see the changes. And then I guess you can see that we have the 50 pixel on the left hand side and the right hand side sides. So you can specify each sides individually, or you can just use the you can say margin what, you can just say margin top, margin bottom, and then you give it each value. Like you can say margin, or let me say margin left, then perhaps let me give it 100 pixel. So guys, we are going to see that it's going to have the same effect. The same apply with the padding. Let me see. And then I guess you can see that on the left hand side you have what, 100 pixels, or 100 pixel, yeah. So basically guys, this is all about the padding and the margin. And something else that I want us to talk about is the border. So with the border, we have the border radius, border border color and all that. So let's now target the h1, this h1. So I'm going to use what, h1 of the selector, so h1, and then I open and close the curly braces, and then I'm going to use this property border. So border, you can give it let me say what, let me give it something like remember that in the border we have, you can give it the width, the thickness for the border. Like you can give it 2 pixel, and then remember you have several types of border. You can have dashed, you can have solid, you can have those 3D ones, but for example I like using the solid, and then I will give it a color, like the color let me give it something like red. So the h1 will have this border. Let me save and see. And then I guess you can see that we have the border on this heading. And then you can specify, you can change anything, like you can give it the thickness, perhaps let's give it a thick is 5. You can write a thick, or you can just give it 5. I can just write a word thick. Let me say thick. Thick is like 5, thin is like thin, like actually medium is like a 3 pixel, and then solid, then 1 pixel is like a thin, and then let me try to give it a dashed, then let me save. Then our border is going to be dashed, and then 5 pixel thick. So guys, you can see that the border is now 5 pixel thick. Let's also try to add the padding here, padding left. So padding left. Let's add this property here, padding left. Perhaps let me give it a 50 pixel. So let me save, and then I see the changes, and then guys, you can see that I have some space here between the this I say that a padding is all about the space bit inside, the borders of an element. So guys, you can see that you have the space here. Now what else? And then the other thing that you need to know about the borders, you can have also the border radius property. Let me try this border radius property, like a border radius. Border radius, can give it any, like let me try 50 or 30 pixel. But now here, let me change it to solid. I like using solid. Let me say solid, and then let me save and see. And then I guess you can see that our border here has what, the radius of 30 pixel. And then the same can apply with the image, like let's add an image here to our HTML. So let me go to the HTML, and then add what, let me add an image, so using the img tag. And then here I'm going to write what, let me write test test. For example, let me just write this exact name, so test dot then I'm going to choose what, this JPG here, this file here. So let me first of all save and see the image. And so guys, you can see that I have this image here. Now I want us to apply the the same property here in the image to add the border radius. So with the border radius, now I'm going to target the img. So here to my CSS, I'm going to write what, img as the selector, img, and then open and close the curly braces, and then I'm going to say what, let me say border radius. For example, can give me any, like if I give it a 50%, it's going to be what, it's going to be a circular or a spherical. Let me save and see. So the image will be spherical, and so guys, you can see that the image is now spherical. So let me perhaps reduce the height. We use the height property now to reduce. So height, you can give it something like even 8, or give it 100 pixel. So let me save and see. And then guys, you can see that this image, you have reduced it to 100 pixel. You can adjust it even to 200. Let me give it 200 pixel. And then let me save and see. And then guys, you can see this how you adjust the sizes. So I think that is now all about the border radius. Now the other thing that I want us to talk about is the font family. So we have several types of font family, but now allow me to just use the sans serif. So let me target now this p tag. So by default this is Times New Roman, I guess, but now let's change the font family. You can give it any. Let me give it this Times New Roman. Let me change to another. Let me try this one, Ramona space here, Courier. Let me save, and then I see the changes. And then I guess you can see that the fonts have changed here. So we use the font family property to change the fonts. To learn more about the fonts, you'll go to my website. My website is www.nametech.com, and by there you'll find the full reference to this course here. So guys, when you visit this website, you are going to find the full course for for the CSS. But for now guys, I think you have now a clue about the font family. And so guys, the last thing that I want us to talk about here in CSS, the very important part is now the the Flexbox. So we are going to use the Flexbox property, and then let me add it here. So first of all, let me create a class. If you're using the Visual Studio Code, you can just write dot, and then I'll give it a class like let me say container. Now remember divs, now the common denominator when you use a dot. And then perhaps let me create also another one for card. So dot card, another second class. I'm going to give it a dot card, and then inside this card guys, I can add an image img and then do it specify the image like test dot for example, let me choose this one, and then also let me add also some text. So I'm going to use a p tag, and then I'm going to write what lorem, perhaps lorem 20, and then what else I'm going to write let me add perhaps a h1 for title, and then perhaps let me say Nehemiah. And so here I'm going to give it Nehemiah, and perhaps here I forgot to add what lorem 20. Let me say lorem 20 so that it may generate 20 words. And then what is so the other thing that I want us to style it here, let me first of all remove this style in here so that we may begin afresh, so that it may not confuse you. So here let me say Nehemiah here, Nehemiah Wekesa. And so guys, the other thing that I need to do here now is to let me try to remove these other headings here. And then what I do guys, let me save, and first of all see the changes in the browser. And so guys, you can see that I have this image here, very perfect, in some text here at the bottom. So guys, I want us to talk about the the flex box. So now the first thing that I want us to talk about in the Flexbox, because I want to create several columns. So what I'm going to do now, let me copy from this part from card. Let me copy from this card, then let me duplicate it and at least make 3 columns, and then do what? Let me save. And then in the browser guys, you can see actually we have. So what I'm going to do now guys is to add the Flexbox. So now the first thing that I'm going to do now is to change the display to be in a flex format. So we are going to use the flex. So now we are going to target now the class. The class is going to be what? Container. So let me copy the class name. You ensure that you write the exact class to the selector, but you begin with the dot because the div is our common denominator here. And then I do what? You open and close the curly braces. Actually dot container is now the descendant of a div, so you write dot container. And then now we are going to change it to the display. So the display, when you give it a flex, so your item is going to be arranged in a raw format. So let me save guys, and then I see the changes in the browser. And then now guys, you can see that our image here is now arranged in a column way when you use the display to be a flex format. So our items are going to be arranged in a flex format. So now what I'm going to do now next is perhaps let me try to reduce the size here for the images. So I'm going to target now the img. So let me say img and the selector, and then let me reduce the size. So like let me say width for example, let me give it something like 400, or let me give it 300 pixel by 300 pixel. Actually now here should be the height. height property now 300. Let me give it also 300 pixel. So let me save and see. Now you can see guys that our images are now very perfect. And so guys, you can see how easy it is to create your Flexbox. So you can add more details like the text align and all that, background color for the entire box and all that. But for now guys, I just wanted to give you the basics of the CSS. You can find the full course on our website, which is, let me just write the domain here, the website www.nametech.com. So guys, once you visit this website, you're going to find the full course for this CSS. So guys, I'm very much happy that you've watched to the end, and I'm pretty sure that you've gained something. So guys, until next time, goodbye.